I've heard so much talking about Israel lately in the news, I just had to clear up a few issues. First, about, quote, returning to the 1967 lines. Let me explain what that means. The pre-1967 lines are actually the 1949 ceasefire lines from the War of Independence. It left Israel with about 20 years of taking pot shots from Syria and Jordan and Egypt whenever they wanted to, because up north, Syria had the mountain range to shoot down at Jews. And from the, quote, West Bank, Jordan had the luxury of attacking Israel while still enjoying the view of the Israeli beach, because there were certain strips of Israel that were actually only 9 miles wide between Jordan and the beach. The part that everybody seems to be missing about these 1967 lines is that Israel didn't take the land from the Palestinians when it conquered it. Actually, in 1948, the Jews acquired the land from the British Empire, who was in control of the land at the time. Prior to, Jews that were coming to the land actually just purchased property. And then in 1967, they conquered the Gaza Strip from Egypt, the West Bank from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria, meaning that the Arabs living in the West Bank were actually Jordanian citizens, not Palestinian refugees. And on a side note, if you look at refugee situations around the world, they're usually a displaced people group for a few years, and then somebody works out something to absorb them into their own country. Unfortunately, in 1948, the Arab League passed a resolution forbidding any of the surrounding Arab nations from absorbing the Arabs that left Israel. And so the refugee problem has never been solved, although it could have been solved like 50 years ago. And around Israel's Independence Day every year, some Arabs like to celebrate Nakba, which is the great catastrophe of the founding of the State of Israel, in which they claim that about 600,000 Arabs were expelled from Israel. That's partially true. In short, there were many Arabs that actually left their homes because they expected the surrounding Arab nations to destroy Israel, and then they were going to go back. And when that didn't happen, it kind of made for an awkward situation. Then there were other Israeli military operations which would go into villages, and if the Arab village reacted hostilely to the Jews being there, then they were expelled. However, if they did not react hostilely, they were actually given citizenship. Thus, we have about 1 million Israeli Arabs in Israel today. Now, simultaneously, while the Arabs were moving out of Israel, there was about 900,000 Jews that were expelled out of the surrounding Arab nations because they said, now you have your own homeland, get out of here. So then Israel absorbed them into her own land. Now, I've talked to some people and asked them why the Arab nations won't absorb the Palestinians into their land. And they would argue that there's some different type of Arab, which is really sad because Israel absorbs every type of Jew from the four corners of the earth. And so that begs the question, what exactly is a Palestinian Arab? Where did they come from? Well, if you asked Arafat when he was alive, he would argue that they were Jordanians. But unfortunately, Jordan revoked the citizenship of the Arabs that lived in the West Bank, which could have solved the Palestinian refugee problem. And I guess that's why they revoked it. But Arafat's dead, so I guess we'll have to ask another Palestinian. Yes, you're a Palestinian. Exactly where did you descend from that you're so different from your brothers in our neighboring nations? Well, we descended from the Paleolithic people group time period, which specialized in making tools out of stones. That's why we still use them today. Okay, seriously, where did you descend from? Oh, we descended from the Philistines, who were here long before the Jews were. Okay, you're right. The Philistines did live in Gaza, and if they had not been annihilated about 1000 BC, then perhaps you would have something to claim. But since they were annihilated, and they don't exist anymore, it's kind of hard to buy that. The truth is, the original Palestinians were actually Jews who lived in Israel under the rule of the Roman Empire, who renamed Israel Palestine as kind of a mockery, because he knew that Israel and the Philistines had always been arch enemies, even though the Philistines didn't exist at the time. And the area never really became a state, it just kind of remained a region that was conquered by random empires over the last 2,000 years. In fact, after the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD by the Roman Empire, Jerusalem never was sought after to become the capital of any country or people group or anything. Yet, interestingly enough, now Hamas says that as soon as they conquer Israel and Jerusalem and all that, they want Palestine to become the capital of the Islamic Caliphate. It's fantastic. The reason would not be because Jerusalem or Israel holds any importance to them historically. It would simply be a symbolic place of the ultimate conquering of the Jews and phase one of conquering the West.